Welcome! This video contains an introduction, an interview so you can gain deeper understanding of the subject from spirit level, and a group frequency calibration so you can start to clear the frequency distortion patterns around this topic. Enjoy! Hi everyone, my name is Karen Cheong and I'm here with my co-host Dennis Kelly. Most people think that if you're female, it's all about embodying the divine feminine, and if you're male, it's all about embodying the divine masculine. But today we're going to be talking about how, from spirit perspective, we all have the feminine and the masculine within us. Now, I'm not talking about sexual orientation or sexual preference. I'm talking about energy, and it's not an either or, it's a both. Now, of course, for the vast majority of us, there's one of these aspects that is most predominant and that we identify most with. And it doesn't matter whether you're in a male or a female body. What's important is not to negate the aspect that is less predominant, even if it's much less predominant, because it can cause a tremendous amount of distortion. So once we understand and can accept that both the masculine and the feminine reside within us, we can have a fuller, more authentic expression of self and live from a more empowered state. So let's jump right in. Dennis?
Male and female energy. Wow. So I'm real curious where we're going to go with this. And,
Me too.
Because I've got the feeling that maybe what you're going to be talking about is balance. So even though I'm male, you know, my focus shouldn't be just on that strong male dominance energy. Why wouldn't that be okay?
There was so much there. Where to begin?
I think you're trying to tell me I've got a problem.
No. So I'm going to talk about the masculine and the feminine, okay, as sort of aspects. And what I'll say is it's interesting that we think of the masculine as strong and dominant. And I'm not criticizing you, but it's just interesting. That's the stereotype of the masculine. And what I would say is there's, interestingly, a rediscovery in both the masculine and the feminine of their essences. Okay, so I'm talking about the predominant aspect right now. So if your predominant aspect is feminine and you identify most with that, there is an exploration now of the divine feminine and what that means and what is that really, right? Because it's not just about what the cultural conditioning is, which is that anything feminine may have been construed as weak. Right? So vulnerability or emotionality or softness was considered weak. And so women had to feel like they had to be in their masculine to be in the corporate world and to survive, right? So a lot of women right now are striving to rediscover the strength of the feminine, because right now they're in situations where in order to compete and to be in the corporate world, they have to be in their masculine, and they're starting to find that it's not sustainable for them. Likewise, a lot of males who have, you know, their dominant aspect is masculine. They're looking to rediscover the masculine, because so much of what has been portrayed in our culture as masculine is strong and dominant, that there is a backlash against that by their mothers who didn't want to raise little jerks. You know, they didn't want to raise, you know, boys who were just kind of, you know,
the
bullies and you know, dominating people, right? So they actually went a little too feminine, right? So they're now discovering what it means to be in the masculine, to hold space, to be grounding, to be solid and firm, and yet at the same time, not a jerk, right? Like how do you be in your masculine and assert authority without having to prove it all the time, or just the weak masculine? So to answer your question, so it's important to discover those things, to clear all that. There's a large movement towards, of each gender now going back towards what is the essence of their predominant aspect. And to get to your question, it's important not to negate the other, because we all have both. So for example, right now in our culture, it has become okay to emasculate men. It's just okay to say, you know, that men are kind of stupid and they're always doing dumb things, and why can't they find the thing in the back of the fridge, and, you know, all this stuff. Like, there's a lot of emasculation of men right now in our culture, and it's okay. And it's really, and I understand that I'm not suggesting that there are men who have abused their power, because there are many of them, and that sexually there's stuff. I mean, there's a lot, the whole Me Too movement. Okay, so I'm not suggesting that is inappropriate, because of course that happened. And as women, or those of us who have the feminine as the predominant thing, still have a male aspect to us. So to negate it and to emasculate the masculine is really a negation of self, because that is within us. We need the masculine aspect within us. So I identify more with the feminine. That's my predominant aspect. I used to be a lot my masculine. And in my feminine, it's really lovely to have this other aspect of me that is masculine. It balances me. It helps to make me more solid. It gives me foundation. It allows me to have focus, to have, to move in a very specific direction when I want to, and to have a certain type of authority. So for men, likewise, even if they, not just men, but whoever associates or identifies with the masculine as the predominant aspect, whether you're in a male or female body, there is a part of you that is feminine. There is that nurturing. So, I mean, even if you are a father, for example, and you have children, there's a part of you that nurtures those children. So yes, it is a feminine aspect. It may be shown through the masculine, but it is still a feminine aspect of you. And why wouldn't you want to nurture your children? Of course, that's, you can do it in, through the masculine, but it's still a feminine aspect of you. So to negate the feminine or to belittle it or to abuse it or whatever is really a negation of self. So it's interesting because in our culture, we're so polarized about, especially with men, if you're like, oh, I have a feminine aspect, it might mean that you're gay. But I'm not talking about sexual preference or sexual orientation. I'm talking about just this essence within you that can, allow yourself to be witnessed, allows yourself to connect to the mystery, which is a feminine trait, to allow yourself to receive, that's a feminine trait, that to collaborate, feminine trait. So you see, it's not, and even in my speaking of it, it's not that linear, but it's, these essences of these things.
So can I ask you a tough one?
Go for it.
Here's the
nervous. I'm ready.
Here's the curveball.
Yeah.
So I'm when we come into this world,
yep.
Do we come in balanced?
No, we come
and
in.
And then we become distorted?
No.
Or do we come in distorted and we may get even more distorted, or we may start to balance? I mean, like from the time of conception, and then we're, come into this world, energetically, are we balanced when you talk about the male and the female energy? And
So I'm going to answer from a different perspective,
okay,
if that's okay.
Okay.
So from a frequency perspective, so I'm not talking about energy now, I'm talking about from a frequency perspective.
Yeah.
We are like programs running, okay? So the predominant setting that we have, the first setting when we come into body is human. First setting, human. The second setting is male, female. Okay, are you in a male body or a female body? Okay. From that, there is the masculine, feminine. So that means that who we tend to identify with, the traits that we tend to embody more, tends to be more one than the other. It's not a distortion, it's just that is the program that's running. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we tend to have one that's more predominant than the other. It's not a distortion in the sense of like if there's something wrong. It's just that and we're not in balance. So in the sense that it's equal. So I just want to, so balance implies equality. You can have, to me, when I hear that word, so that's my perspective, if you can also be in balance and have one dominant and one, I guess, like less dominant. So for some people, they'll be extremely feminine, very, 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 very feminine, have a very tiny aspect of themselves that is masculine, but it's still there. But they're predominant, that's what they predominantly are, that's their essence. Yeah. And likewise, there are some who are predominantly masculine and still have a part of them, a small aspect of them, that is feminine. All I'm saying is that we have both, in whatever ratio is appropriate for you.
And so I think the rest of that story, and maybe where you started, is for me to go out and to trash somebody that I perceive as not being, balanced, is doing a disservice to myself. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of where you were at, as far as that? Because I have the essence of both, and to think that whatever I am is superior.
Right. So what I'm saying, I think, perhaps, is that to negate the other aspect. So for example, in our culture, if we were very associated with the masculine, okay, and you're like a man's man,
Okay, you're very about being a man's man, you're a guy, you like do the guy things, yeah, whatever. That it's okay to, talk trash about women or whatever it is, right? Like belittle, like, it's like calling someone a pussy, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of. So it's because it's derogatory, right? Because that's weak. That's the implication is that is weak.
Down.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've got the stronger.
Exactly.
And so, but what you're saying, I'm doing a disservice to myself.
Yes, because in negation of that other, of the feminine, that is an aspect of you.
Yeah.
It is an aspect of you.
Yeah.
And similarly, women are, can talk trash about men. We're like, whatever we talk about. There's many things that are, in our culture that, men are whatever, that, stupid or whatever.
It sounds like it's a long list.
It's a long list. It's quite long. I can't even enumerate all of it. It's shocking to me. But we emasculate our men all the time, and we think it's okay. Yeah. It's not okay. It's not okay. And I understand that there's a lot of anger from women who have been abused by men, and that's totally
just trying to get
even. And that makes sense because there are men who've done some really not okay things. So I understand that anger, and then beyond that anger, it's about, okay, well, this is also part of me. So how do I come into union with this? How, even if not only inwardly but externally with the dialogue with other. So it's all about becoming whole, because we are both. We are the union of the masculine and the feminine within. And it might be in different ratios, but it's still us. And so there, like I said, there's a lot of confusion still even about the predominant one. Like, what does it mean to be awakened masculine? What does it mean to be awakened feminine? And there's all this like new age stuff about all that stuff, right? Which can be helpful, and sometimes there's a lot of misinformation around it. And it's important also to not negate the other. So important to clear both, essentially, and to recognize both, and to not slam the other.
So just that little figment of what you just said there, that to clear both.
Mm-hmm.
So to clear both.
Mm-hmm.
So I sit here as a man, and I've got both these energies running. So to clear both. What do you mean by that?
Right. So that means that, for example, for you, you would want to, in embracing and cleaning the distortions around the masculine, for example, right? Because that's your predominant thing that you happen to associate with as your predominant essence, that you would also clear anything around having like feminine traits. So like around seeing that as weak, or being so for example, like it's okay, like being able to express emotion.
I can honor those emotions and feelings that are...
So you're allowed to have emotionality, because
it's okay for me.
Because there's cultural programming that says that the masculine can't express emotion because it's considered to be weak, because that's what the feminine does, right? Or around receiving, or around vulnerability, or around, and I'm not saying you have to go around parading vulnerability, but I'm just saying that it's okay for you to experience vulnerability around being witnessed or whatever that is. That's a feminine thing. So to clear that so that you can feel like, okay, I'm complete, right? So I have this masculine aspect and I have this feminine aspect, and both are clear. It's okay for me to be both of these things in whatever ratio is appropriate for you.
Yeah. And so I would think that if I do the work and establish that balance, that if I move into a relationship, whatever that relationship is, the chances of it being much more successful are a lot higher.
For sure, yeah.
If I have figured out who I am, and I honor both sides of
exactly.
that. Okay.
And it's not about balance, because balance to me is about evenness. It's about acknowledgement of both.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever level.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And just accepting it so that you can have the space to be and the freedom to choose to be, expressive with your children, for example, right? Because, for some men that's not appropriate. Like they get nurturing from their mother, they don't get nurturing from their father, right? No. So, but that's a cultural constraint. No. So to release all that stuff so that you can have the choice to be who you are, right? And if you're not naturally expressive, that's fine. You don't have to be. But that you can be if you choose to be, as opposed to being bound by the cultural constraints and the lineage constraints of like what is appropriate for a man, what is considered to be weak, what is considered to be, And similarly for women, for us to be like, well, all this cultural constraint about what it means to be a good girl, what it means to be, appropriate, what it means to be, what does it mean to be in the feminine, really? Because there's all these stories about what it means to be the feminine, and all of us have our own unique spins on this because we have different ratios of the masculine and the feminine in us. So what does that mean? And it's sometimes frowned upon if you have, in this this new spiritual movement where it's like, if you're really in your feminine, you're always in flow and you're always loose, and it's sort of frowned upon if you're linear or focused or whatever, like that's just considered masculine and not good. But I'm like, well, it also gets stuff done, and that's not bad. Yeah. So it is honoring both.
Yeah, honoring both.
It's honoring both in whatever it is for you, and really stop the slamming of the other gender. It doesn't help us, because it's really us that we're slamming. It's really just a reflection of ourselves.
And I think that would be extremely critical in a household. So for the children to be able to see that type of behavior, that respect and honoring, and the person within themselves honoring who they are, but also the common respect and honoring of each other.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that when you are clear in and of yourself, and you're fully expressing who you are, then your other, whoever it is that comes in with you, has the freedom to be who they are. And it's really beautiful, because if both are strong in and of themselves, they augment each other. So the predominant things can augment each other. So if I'm predominantly feminine, let's just say, and you're predominantly masculine, that's what you identify with. And if we were to come together in relationship, then what would happen is that naturally my feminine would become enhanced as your masculine would be, but there's no negation of the, does that make sense?
There you go.
There's no negation of it. So there's no need for me to prove anything. There's no need for you to prove anything to me from that, right? There's no negation. So what happens is the dominant one can grow and flourish and so on, because there's no suppression of the other one. There's no distortion caused by the negation of the other. Does that make sense?
I got it.
Okay. Yeah. So it can be really powerful in partnership, and it's something that Chris and I have had to clear a lot on, because because my lineage is Chinese, and so the way that we were brought up is that all the masculine traits were good, and most of the feminine traits were bad. Because we needed to be successful and focused and driven and all those things that give us success in the material world. Because, and crying, emotionalness, whatever, it's just weak. It's just like, don't even, whatever. There's no time for that. Just do your times tables or whatever it was, and we were all about success. So we had a very complete, my mom at age 4, 5, 6 was already thinking about my resume. She already was building my resume. She already was. And that was her way of making sure that I would be successful. She wanted to be sure that I would be successful in the world. It wasn't because she was trying to punish me. She was trying to, do her best. So, but as a result, I was very in my masculine. And Chris was very in his feminine, because his mom wanted to make sure she raised a good man who was not a jerk. She wanted him to be
very sensitive.
Sensitive and aware of others, and kind and considerate and helpful, and he is all those things. And now he's found his masculine also. So it's really awesome, because now we're in what I would consider to be in alignment with what we consider to be our true essence. So it allows the other to augment. But there's also no suppression of my masculine or his feminine. So what I love about him is he is very kind, and he is very generous, and he is very considerate, and it's a beautiful quality in him. And he also has all these masculine traits. It makes his masculine stronger. And for me, I can be very focused, and I can be very decisive and goal-oriented if I need to be. And I'm also very soft. So it's like this beautiful interplay, and I don't use it all the time, but it just provides this foundation for me. So it's a really awesome place, because it just enhances the whole. Enhances the whole.
I think this is so critical at this time, especially, we live in different worlds as we journey. We've got our, sometimes our corporate job, where we perceive we have to act like this. And then we go back to our family and we have to act like this. And then we got our friends and our, and we act like this. And so it gets sometimes kind of confusing.
Oh, totally. And it's particularly difficult in the corporate world, which is a predominantly male environment. And what I will say the women watching this in that world is the more that you become your essence, meaning the more work that we do on ourselves, the more we release our frequency distortions, what will happen is even in your feminine, even in your beingness, what will happen is that because you're so clear and you are your authentic expression of self, you will still rise in the ranks of the corporate world because your beingness is so strong that people will want to be with you. So they'll want to collaborate. They'll want to be around you. The synchronicities will fall in. People will, follow your instinct, right? Or which you will call your intuition, whatever, a more feminine word. But you can use your intuition and your feeling sense more, and it will enhance who you are and how you succeed in that world, because that feeling sense is almost always right, or for most of us, right. But, depends on where you are. So, yeah.
So you don't have to sacrifice your essence or your gifts as you move into different parts of the life that you live.
Exactly. In fact, there's going to be no separation because it's all one.
Yeah.
And what's really lovely about this work is you stop caring about all that difference. You're like, okay, whatever. They can.
I am who
I am, and they are going to adjust around me, and they do.
And the thing about it is that I am who I am, and I'm extremely happy.
Exactly.
And excited. And, I want to be part of this. And people like, wow, really?
Yeah.
And it's like they catch that fire.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah. And it becomes a celebration. And then it gives them permission to be who they are. And it's amazing what can happen. The catalysts that we are. Yeah. And we don't even realize who we're influencing just by being. It's really amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Karen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Karen, could you help me? I hear so often when I look at your video or your website, GFC. Exactly what is that?
A GFC is a group frequency calibration, which looks a lot like a guided meditation on a particular topic. And what I'm doing is I'm helping you to remove the distortion patterns of that particular topic. And because you're coming together as a mastermind in a group to connect to pure source even more and to clear the distortion patterns of this particular topic, what happens is a tremendous amount of momentum starts to happen because of the energetic of the entire group, and each individual is able to move faster and ascend higher than they could have on their own.
Welcome everyone to the group frequency calibration on the Yin and the Yang. So this group frequency calibration is the beginning. In order to clear the aspects of us, both the masculine and the feminine, it takes some time for most of us because we have so many lineage and cultural distortions. So this is the beginning of that. If you are interested in doing something further, then there are deep dives on my website, sphericalluminosity.com, where you can go deep on clearing both the aspects of the feminine and the masculine. So let's begin by taking 3 deep breaths and focusing on your lower belly into the base of your sternum. So wherever you imagine your lower belly is, all the way up to the base of your sternum. And your sternum is that big thick bone in the center of your chest where your ribs meet in front of your body. So bring your awareness, attention, focus to the space between your lower belly and the base of your sternum. And let's take our first breath for a count of 4, holding your breath in for a count of 4. And when you're ready to exhale, exhaling for a count of 4, and holding out your breath for a count of 4. And on your second breath, inhaling for a count of 5, and holding your inhaled breath in for a count of 5. And when you get to your exhale, please exhale for a count of 6, holding out your exhaled breath for a count of 6. And on your third breath, inhale as slowly as you can. And then at the top of your breath, hold your breath in for as long as you think you can. And when you get to your exhale, please exhale as slowly as you can, holding out your exhaled breath for as long as you think you can. And when you get to the edge of what you think you can hold your breath out for, stretch beyond that edge and hold it out for a split second longer. Good. And when you're complete with those 3 breaths, bring your attention, focus, awareness to your solar plexus between your belly button and the base of your sternum. And breathe normally. Just waiting for the mastermind to gel. And as I do that, for those of you who are new, please note that I'll be working on you at the group and the subgroup level. And also that I will be making noises on my end. So you'll hear me exhale sharply or yawn. Sometimes I'll hum. And that's how I remove the distortion patterns or move the frequencies around. At least for now. Good. The mastermind has just gelled. So let's go ahead and ask ourselves, the following question, which is, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? That question, again, is how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? And as you ask yourself that question, please imagine, see, sense, feel, or become aware of a brilliance deep, deep within you that becomes brighter, even more radiant, even more expanded as you become even more aware of your connection only to pure source. And on my side, I'm expanding your natural bandwidth at whatever level you are at. Good. So now bringing your attention, focus, awareness back to the solar plexus, if your attention has wandered, in the space between your belly button and the base of your sternum. So, the first distortion pattern that we're going to remove is that of shame. And a very, let's call it distorted cultural and lineage perspective and religion on what the authentic masculine and what the authentic feminine is. So the shame, oddly, is that there is even this binding, that there is this distortion around this at all, on something that is of a very pure and almost basic foundational setting, okay, in terms of frequency pattern. So let's remove these two distortions, which are pretty significant. And for a pretty large subgroup of you, the shame is also that you don't conform entirely to what is dictated for either the masculine or the feminine by religion, culture, or lineage. So removing this. Okay, so in the same location in your solar plexus, there are two distortion patterns that are sort of bundling together.
The first is confusion. Total lack of clarity on what an authentic masculine and what an authentic feminine looks like without the distortion patterns. So without this societal and the cultural and the lineage distortions, a lot of confusion. And bundled with it is the distortion pattern of low self-worth, mixed in with a little abuse or self-loathing, okay, because you aren't really comfortable with whatever ratio you are of masculine and feminine. So this is quite a cocktail of frequency distortions, which leads us to be not at ease with ourselves. It is difficult to fully accept ourselves with these running. So we tend to put on masks of what we think the feminine and the masculine should be based on all these distortion patterns. So let's just remove this, because those masks require a lot of effort. They're distorting. And they keep you from your true essence. So, or experiencing your true essence, I should say. So let's remove these. Breathe deeply into your solar plexus. Please note that if I say something that really resonates with you, it's likely yours. And if I say something that you really react against, like that couldn't possibly be me, it's likely yours. So I invite you to be open to that possibility and to explore it. And there is a subgroup of you who were punished either physically, emotionally, or psychologically, or verbally, if you went counter to what your personal experience of the collective decided the masculine or the feminine should be. Because your own unique mix of those two aspects. So removing those patterns of abuse from you.
So now, please become aware of the space between your groin and your lower belly. And if you're female or in a female body, please also become aware of your womb space. Okay. All right. So the next distortion pattern has to do with repression or suppression of authentic expression of the male and the female aspects. With regards to sexuality in particular, confusion about how to act congruently when it comes to sexuality. And by that I mean there are a lot of women who are running masculine patterns that aren't their predominant aspect. So they get taken advantage of sexually because it's not congruent with their essence. So they end up with a lot of different men. Men don't value them. They are very used. Okay, so that's one possibility. And for men, or those in male bodies, this has to do with having difficulty getting your needs met sexually in a way that's satisfying to you. So even if you are getting a lot of sex, it somehow is empty for you. And it's hard for you to attract a woman that you would like to partner with, or even a male to partner with if you're gay, to partner with for the long term. Like you can attract sex, but you can't attract partner. So, or if you do have a partner, she withholds sexuality from you, or withholds sex from you. So anyway, there's a lot of this kind of thing going on. So let's, those are the main subgroup. There's many more, but I'm not going to go into them all. So I'm just going to pull out as much as I can in terms of distortion here. There's a lot of it. Okay. So just all you have to do, whether or not that made any sense to you, is to keep your attention on your groin all the way up to your belly button. bringing your attention to your heart space. Good. So as you become aware of this space that is your heart space, imagine dissolving or melting into or expanding into this vast space that is your heart. And as you expand or move into, melt into this space, I'm going to amplify the essence of the feminine and then the masculine, void of the human judgment of those two qualities, or those two aspects rather. Okay? Just so you have an idea of what that is, because both are within you, just in different ratios, all right? So as I'm doing this, continue to rest in the space that is your heart. First, the feminine. Yep. And now amplifying the masculine, this frequency of the masculine. So that was the frequency of the feminine within you, because it's within all of us. And now amplifying the frequency of the masculine, non-distorted by the human ideas of the masculine, just the frequency of the masculine. Good. And now the two of them in union within yourself, not outside yourself, within yourself, in harmony, in union. Void of the human judgment around what these qualities are. Just the two frequencies in union. Beautiful. So I'm going to leave you in the frequency of union, in the vast space that is your heart. And I look forward to working with you on the next GFC.